only very recently. I wasn't introduced to it, but it's only very recently that it's now becoming the obvious way to do it.
And it's still on to today.
Yeah.
And then Gimel 53. A, we're a page behind.
Should be something more.
We start with Amar Rebbe. It's let's see,
Top line.
not the top line. It's 5, 10, 16 lines probably from the top. The line starts in my Gemara. It starts Hashmashas, and it's Amar Rebbe. It's a little under. I can't say anymore under that day for Bach because there's so many different prints. Which one is what? 53, A2. Okay, we start over here. Amar Rebbe. Let me read a little bit. We'll go back and explain what's going on. Amar Rebbe Nidda Daf Rabbi Yehuda ben Agri Keshalei Bad. Rebbe says that he'll accept the words of Yehuda ben Agri that says the name of Rabbi Yossi if there was no examination. Now the Gemara asks, "My leibadka." What does it mean? There's no examination. Now let's go back and discuss what's happening here. So, if a woman sees blood 3 days in a row, then she becomes a Zava Gedola. Now, there's one loophole here. Not a loophole, it's like a stringency. That if she sees 2 days in a row, and one of those days is Bein Hashmashas, one of those things is Bein Hashmashas, that's considered like 2 days. So it's 1 plus the Bein Hashmashas, which could add up into 3. The 1 plus 1 here would equal 3 because of the Bein Hashmashas seeing. Now, that was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Agri in the name of Rabbi Yossi. He says that you have to suspect if there's a stain that's the size of 2 stains, and it could be that it came Bein Hashmashas, so then you have to suspect that that's really considered 3 seeings. However, the Chachamim said that no, it needs to be the size of 3. So comes along Rebbe and says that he'll accept the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra in a case where there was no examination that was done Bein Hashmashas, because it's very possible that there really was blood Bein Hashmashas. Okay, and he also says that if there was an examination,
it will be considered like 3.
It will be considered like 3 if there was an examination. And if there was an examination, then he'll accept the opinion of the Chachamim that say that you need to have 100% 3 seeings for it to be tummy. If there is a possibility there that the blood came Bein Hashmashas, then you have to suspect Rabbi Yehuda ben Agri, and okay. Gemara says, "My leibadka." What does it mean that he'll accept the opinion of Yehuda ben Agri that could be they saw Bein Hashmashas if there was no examination? We're talking about there was no examination of her body. On her body, there was no examination, but the examination of her clothing that happened at the end after 2-3 days. She looked at the clothing, and there was the blood. What does it mean there was no examination of her body? Let's look at this. We mentioned this yesterday, that there's two Bein Hashmashas. There's the earlier Bein Hashmashas, which has a longer period, which we said was probably 12 minutes, because Rabbi Yehuda's Bein Hashmashas is when a part of the sky darkened. It's a 12-minute period of Bein Hashmashas. That's the earlier one. And then there's the Bein Hashmashas of Rabbi Yossi, which is the whole thing is keheref ayin. It's like the blink of an eye. It's a very quick Bein Hashmashas, and that usually happens after. Usually, I don't mean really usually. I mean, according to most opinions, that happens after the Bein Hashmashas of Rabbi Yehuda. So when we say that there was no examination, and that's why Rebbe is concerned that Rabbi Yehuda ben Agri is correct, that the blood came Bein Hashmashas. What does it mean that there was no examination Bein Hashmashas? Which Bein Hashmashas was there no examination? So if he says that there was no examination in the earlier Bein Hashmashas, I'm sorry, there was no examination in Rabbi Yossi's Bein Hashmashas, but there was an examination in the earlier one. That means Michlal.
How is the ratio of Bein Hashmashas?
That is the Bein Hashmashas. It's
keheref ayin. You don't know when it is.
No, it's not that you don't know when it is. You know when it is, but there's no length. There's no length of that Bein Hashmashos. In other words, is there a time between day and night? According to Rabbi Yossi, no. It's one comes in, one goes out. But that time is the Bein Hashmashos. That moment is the Bein. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Bein Hashmashos takes 12 minutes.
Like the beginning of Shabbos, going to when the
You're in the middle. You're
when
nowhere.
Hashem stop work.
Rabbi, unless we should get it fine.
According to Rabbi Yossi.
She don't know if she has to go or not to go. I mean, if she's not, she has to go right away.
Here we're talking about, did the blood come exactly at that moment, and was there an examination exactly at that moment? So the Gemara starts off suggesting that that there was no examination in Rabbi Yossi's Bein Hashmashos, but Michlal, that would imply the Rabbi Yehuda Savar. This is the part, the fine part that you have to catch over here. If you catch this, I think we're good. Rabbi Yehuda holds. Rabbi Yehuda has to be more strict than Rabbi, because Rabbi's saying that I'll accept. Confusing you with saying Rabbi Yehuda. You need to say Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra holds. Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra has to be more strict than Rabbi. Don't confuse that with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra has to be more strict than Rabbi, because Rabbi's saying that I'll accept Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra only in such and such a case. That means Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra himself must have more than what Rabbi is accepting him for, or else he would say I accept Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra entirely. But he's not saying that. He's saying I'm only accepting Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra in a specific case. That means that if he's accepting Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra, if there's no examination in Rabbi Yossi, that means Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra held that Rabbi Yehuda Savar Afal Gav the Badka B'Tarvayu Chaysha. He must hold that even if you did an examination in both, you still have to suspect that maybe the blood came during the Bein Hashmashos, even though the examination was done throughout the entire Bein Hashmashos. Somehow, the Gemara says, but that's a problem because Habadka. How could he say that maybe the blood came when there was an examination being done during that time and there was no blood there? Now, for Rebbe, we're fine, because Rebbe's saying you only did an examination for part of it. You didn't do examination for Rabbi Yossi. So the blood came during Rabbi Yossi, and that would be a problem. But when you go back to the original opinion that Rebbe's not accepting entirely, they must be more strict and say that the examination was done the whole time. The examination was done the whole time. How was there blood? If there was no blood in the examination, how did the blood come then? Elapshita, rather we have to say the loy badka loy b'd Rabbi Yehuda v'loy b'd Rabbi Yossi. That when Rebbe says that he'll accept Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra when there was no examination, that means there was no examination. She didn't examine at all. So the blood came Bein Hashmashos, and that's a problem. Aval badka b'd Rabbi Yehuda. But let's say there was an examination in Rabbi Yehuda's time of Bein Hashmashos, which is the 12-minute time. But there was no examination at the end in Rabbi Yossi's Bein Hashmashos. That would not be a problem for Rebbe. Rebbe would say that we've covered all our bases. We did a bedika for Rabbi Yehuda's Bein Hashmashos, and we're not concerned about Rabbi Yossi's Bein Hashmashos. Alma Bein Hashmashos to Rabbi Yossi l'Rebbe lai level. We see that Rebbe's not concerned about Rabbi Yossi's Bein Hashmashos, the later Bein Hashmashos. Rebbe's not concerned about that. Okay. I just want to point out that as we go through this Gemara, we took one side of the Gemara so far. We came to a conclusion that Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra would hold that even if an examination was done by Rabbi Yehuda's Bein Hashmashos, the earlier Bein Hashmashos, let's do Bein Hashmashos A and Bein Hashmashos B. Rabbi Yehuda's Bein Hashmashos A, and Rabbi Yossi is Bein Hashmashos B. It's the later one. B for the blink of the eye. So Rabbi Yehuda would hold that if there was an examination done during Bein Hashmashos A, but not during Bein Hashmashos B, so we have to suspect that maybe the blood came during Bein Hashmashos B, and therefore two spots of blood would make her Tameh as a Zava, as if there were 3 spots, since the blood Bein Hashmashos is considered like 2. And Rebbe says, I don't accept Rabbi Yehuda when there was an examination that was done. I only accept him when no examination was done. We just established that that no examination means no examination, not in Bein Hashmashos A, not in Bein Hashmashos B. The Gemara is Medaya. According to Rebbe, if there was an examination in Bein Hashmashas A, that would be satisfactory, and he won't accept Rabbi Yehuda at all, right? Why? Because Rabbi holds that Bein Hashmashas B is already night. It's not a suffix. If the blood came during Bein Hashmashas B, the later one, Rabbi Yosef Bein Hashmashas, then that would just be the following day. It would just be one. Okay. Now that last point, is going to be contested. What's Rebbe's opinion? What's Rebbe's opinion regarding the second Bein Hashmashas, which from the first side of this Gemara we just got that Rebbe holds Bein Hashmashas B is night. We're about to see that Rebbe, when we take it the other way, the Rebbe doesn't really hold that. So that's going to leave us with the difficulty. Ema Seifa, let's look at the end of Rebbe's statement. Rebbe says, "V'divrei chacham kishabatka," you'll accept the words of the sages kishabatka when an examination was done. That means that it didn't come Bein Hashmashas. Yeah, we're going to get into it.
It's one of the hard knocks.
So 1 second. So he's accepting, the sages say that you need a full 3 spots for her to be a zava. 2 spots, 2 stains is not enough because they're not concerned about blood coming Bein Hashmashas. Rebbe says, I'm also not concerned about blood coming Bein Hashmashas if there was an examination Bein Hashmashas. So he's accepting them if there was a bedika. My batka, what does it mean there was a bedika, there was an examination? If he says it's enough, an examination by Bein Hashmashas A, the first time for Bein Hashmashas. But there was no examination by Rabbi Yaisi. It's so good, it sounds good. That's what's Rabbi's opinion. Everything sounds good. The only problem is Mechlal the Rabbanan Savri, but the Rabbanan have to be more lenient. And the Rabbanan would hold. Why do the Rabbanan have to be more lenient? Because Rebbe says, I'm accepting the Rabbanan only in such and such a case. That means not entirely. That means the Rabbanan have to say something more than Rebbe saying. Rebbe says, I'm accepting them when there's an examination. They must say, even when there's no examination, you still don't suspect. But if there's no examination at all, that would mean even if there's no examination at all, we still don't suspect the blood came Bein Hashmashas. The problem is Halei Badka. Why not? You don't know the blood didn't come then. There was no examination at all during any of the Bein Hashmashas. Rather, we have to redefine Rebbe to be able to define what the Rabbanan hold. It must be the Badka Bein B'd Rabbi Yehuda Bein B'd Rabbi Yaisi. When the Rebbe says that there's an examination, it must mean an examination during both Bein Hashmashas A and B. Well, throughout the long interval, it would be like a Meichdachet sort of thing. So, Aval Badka B'd Rabbi Yehuda B'lei Badka B'd Rabbi Yaisi Chayshinan. Now, how do we get the Rabbanan to be more lenient than Rebbe? There has to be some examination there, or else the Rabbanan can't be lenient. There has to be an examination. So what we do is we put Rebbe that there was a bedika through both Bein Hashmashas. That's when he'll accept the Rabbanan. And he'll put the Rabbanan, there was only a bedika in one. But what does that mean? That if according to Rebbe there was only a bedika in one, that would mean that the other one causes a problem. Now 1 second. Alma Bein Hashmashas to Rabbi Yaisi Rebbe Sveika Havi. What comes out is Bein Hashmashas according to Rabbi Yaisi's Bein Hashmashas, which is Bein Hashmashas B, according to Rebbe, could still be day and still be night. That contradicts exactly what we finished. Well, because if you notice, we said Alma Bein Hashmashas to Rabbi Yaisi Rebbe Lailahu, and now we say Alma Bein Hashmashas to Rabbi Yaisi Rebbe is a Sveika. So what does Rebbe hold about Bein Hashmashas? This is a contradiction. Kasha the Rebbe ad Rebbe. The contradiction, Rebbe on Rebbe, what he holds about Bein Hashmashas. This is called the Yukim Seisrim. Rebbe didn't say the contradiction, but when I derive from Rebbe's first statement, what's implied from Rebbe's first statement contradicts what's implied from Rebbe's second statement. No, so what we're going to do is like this. You see, this is a little easier to get out of. What we do is like this. We say that Rebbe's statement was not his own opinion. It goes like this. Hachi Kamar. This is what he's saying. Nirin Divrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra l'Rabbana. Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra's opinion to the rabbis, his statement that he gives to the rabbis, it appears to be correct. The Leibad Kaklal, in a case, Yehuda ben Agra's opinion is when there was no examination. Leibad Rabbi Yehuda, Leibad Rabbi Yosef. That you have to be suspect that maybe it came ben Hashmashas. Why? Because even the Chachamim did not argue on him. In other words, they only argued on him. Only if there was an examination by Rabbi Yehuda's and not by Rabbi Yosef. But if there was no examination at all, so in other words, what comes out is Rabbi's just saying that he's not saying that he's accepting Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, but they're arguing even more. The Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing even more than what Rabbi's saying. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra's opinion seems to be correct in a case where there's no Bedika Klal, because even the sages only argued about one specific case. If there was a Bedika by Rabbi Yehuda's ben Hashmashas and not by Rabbi Yosef's. So what comes out is that our assumption that if Rabbi's saying he's accepting Rabbi Yehuda's opinion in a certain case, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda must be arguing about more. And Rebbe saying that he's accepting the Chachamim in a certain case. That means that they must be saying more. That's not accurate. That's not accurate. Really, they're not saying anything more. What Rebbe's saying is he's accepting that opinion because even the sages only argued in a specific opinion as well and not in more than that. And that resolves all of our. And now, we have another contradiction, but this next one is not going to be a contradiction in Rabbi. It's going to be a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra. How did we come out over here? We said that Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra would hold that Rabbi Yossi's ben Hashmashas is a suffix. Why? Because the sages disagree with Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra. That the sages hold that Rabbi Yehuda's ben Hashmashas is the main ben Hashmashas, and if there was a bedika done by that ben Hashmashas, then you're all set. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra holds you have to be concerned also about Rabbi Yosef's ben Hashmashas. That's what we established so far. But there's a contradiction. Areya Kesem. The woman sees a stain. Laria Meruba, if it's a large stain, that means it could hold 3 half beans in that stain. When the size of a half a bean is the size of a day stain that could make her tummy. So that's chesheshes. To suspect if maybe she saw 3 times. Laria Moetes, but if it's a smaller stain than 3 sizes, then ain't a chesheshes.
Or 1.5.
1.5. It's really a half. Oh, yes, you're saying 1.5 beans because 3 halves. Okay. So Zu Divrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra, Sham Mishum Rabbi Yosef. Oh, so interesting. It's exactly the opposite of what we said before. Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra says, okay, we'll see in a second. Find me, this person was davening for the Amrit. He said, L'fnei Hashem Kiva, Kiva. Hey, I found the mistake. It says Kiva twice. Okay, so hold it. Well, let's see. I'm a Rebbe. Rebbe says, Ani shamati mimenu. I heard from Rabbi Yossi she'achazu va'achazu chesheshes. That you have to be suspect of both. Okay, now that is really the opinion that we got from Rabbi Yossi before. Before it was Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra saying the name of Rabbi Yossi, that you have to suspect to a stain that's the size of 2 stains, because that could be a combination of a ben Hashmashas stain. And over here we have Rebbe saying it in the name of Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra is saying differently. And Rabbi Yossi explained it to me like this. Rebbe is a student of Rabbi Yossi. Where's our charts? Rabbi Yossi is Rabbi Yossi ben Chalaf. He's a student of Rabbi Akiva. And Rebbe is Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. By the way, when we're talking about Ben Hashmashas, that's Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda as well. Now we're talking about stains, and it's Rabbi Yossi, and it's Rabbi Yehuda Anasi Rebbe. Okay? So Rebbe says, I heard from Rabbi Yossi. We don't have Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra on this chart. So he says, I heard from Rabbi Yehuda, I heard from Rebbe says, I heard from Rabbi Yaisi, the following explanation. A woman that's in Nidda. She did an examination in the morning on the 7th day. And she went to the mikveh that evening, but she didn't do an examination right before Shkia. So it's very possible. The rule is by Nidda, it's called Mayana Pasuach, that the fountain is open. So she has to do an examination right before Shkia to make sure that it's closed. If she didn't do that, then you can suspect that it maybe came afterwards. So if a woman that's in Nidda, she doesn't do a hefsek tara. See, those days they didn't count 7 clean days after Nidda. They only had 7 days of Nidda. That was it. You didn't need the 7 clean days. It was just 7 full days. So she's considered tamei. So therefore, we suspect. What do we see from that? That we suspect that it came in the worst possible time that it came in. So therefore, we should also suspect that it came bein hashmashas. That would mess it up, and that would be that even though it's a smaller stain, it could be. If you don't know that it didn't come, then maybe it did come then. That's the logic over here. Now, I'm curious what the English translations say when it says B'nirin Dvarav. Do they say the words of Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra?
Yeah.
That's what it says? Right, okay, good. Very good. Because it's switching. When you use a pronoun right after another name, you think it's the one that you just mentioned. But here it's not doing that. Here it's going back. This pronoun is sending me back to an earlier name that was mentioned before. And his words, Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra's words, appear to be correct if an examination was done during bein hashmashas. Because we'll say that the blood didn't come bein hashmashas if there was an examination done. So my badka. What do we mean an examination was done? If we say that an examination was done in bein hashmashas A, but not in bein hashmashas B, Michlal, that would imply Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra is the more lenient one. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra Savar, Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra himself holds that even if an examination was not done, and anyone, you still don't have to suspect. The problem is, the problem is but there was no examination. Why? I'm sorry. Why not? Why don't you suspect? Elapshita, we have to say the badka bein b'd Rabbi Yehuda bein b'd Rabbi Yaisi, that when Rabbi is accepting Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra, it's when the examination was done in both. Okay, that would imply Michlal, Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra Savar, he's more lenient. Badka b'd Rabbi Yehuda, b'lay badka b'd Rabbi Yaisi, that you don't suspect. Problem is, Alma bein hashmashas to Rabbi Yaisi. That means that the second bein hashmashas B that we're talking about, the Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra Lailo, you don't suspect that. Why? Because it's night. That contradicts the brises that the brice that we had before, where Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra holds that the whole issue was bein hashmashas to Rabbi Yaisi, the second bein hashmashas. That's what he was arguing with the sages. The bein hashmashas to Rabbi Yaisi, it could be that's when it came, and the sages were saying that we only have to be concerned about the first bein hashmashas. So we have a contradiction now in Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra. Kasha, the Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra, the Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra. Bishlam below Rebbe, if you don't accept Rebbe's, if Rebbe's without Rebbe's words and all of this, so then you can resolve it very easily. Like Kasha, there's no questions. Because Hassam the Badka b'd Rabbi Yehuda, v'lay Badka b'd Rabbi Yaisi. Hacha the Badka b'nami b'd Rabbi Yehuda b'd Rabbi Yaisi. We could answer it very easy. We could say that over there, Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra was machmer because he didn't do a bedika in the Rabbi Yaisi ben hashmashas. That's why he says maybe it came in the later one. And over here, where Rabbi Yehuda ben Machmer ben Agra is Mekel, that's because you did a bedika in both. Hacha debat kanami b'd Rabbi Yehuda b'd Rabbi Yaisi. Rabbi Kasha, but once you put in Rebbe's words into this, because he says that he's only accepting his opinion in one case, that means that he must hold in both cases, and that it's going to be either lenient or strict. So it depends which price you have. So it's a kasha. The Gemara answers, Trei Tanai v'ali b'd Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra. There's 2 Tanaim regarding what Rabbi Yehuda ben Agra holds. Hai Tana Savar Shalom b'd Hashmashas to Rabbi Yehuda, V'hadar chayal bein hashmashas to Rabbi Yosi. One opinion holds that there's actually two bein hashmashas. In other words, when Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi are arguing about when bein hashmashas is, one opinion holds that first Rabbi Yehuda's bein hashmashas, and then afterwards there's Rabbi Yosi's bein hashmashas. There is another opinion that says that bein hashmashas of Rabbi Yosi is included in the bein hashmashas of Rabbi Yehuda. So if there's a bdika being done during Rabbi Yehuda's bein hashmashas, you've covered both places.
It says it in the English really nice. There is a five kind of structure. It's the first blink of an eye after the horizon is darkened. The second one says is the last blink of an eye in which the horizon darkens.
It's at the beginning or the end.
Sounds nice.
The question though is if it's included though.
Right. So if it's
Right.
if it's in the first,
In the beginning, you say,
it's not included.
but that's the chunk. I thought it would be the other way. I thought that Rabbi Yosi would be afterwards. That's how I was learning it. That if I hold this two times and I say first I have the bein hashmashas of Rabbi Yehuda, and then Rabbi Yosi's comes later. That's how I understood. And if I hold that Rabbi Yosi is included in Rabbi Yehuda, then it would be that before Rabbi Yehuda finishes, Rabbi Yosi's was also finished because it's just a moment in there. Is that correct? Okay.
Yours is the quick one.
Rabbi is the quick one. Okay, so therefore, in the second version of here of the Nidda ben Agra, you don't have to suspect that maybe the blood came during Rabbi Yosi's bein hashmashas because there was no Rabbi Yosi's bein hashmashas because the bedika was done during Rabbi Yehuda's bein hashmashas and that covered Rabbi Yosi's bein hashmashas. That's the shot. But according to the first version, there was really a Rabbi Yosi's bein hashmashas and you didn't do a bedika during that, and that's a problem.
Count 2 days.
And that would count as 2 days because the blood could have come during the later bein hashmashas. And according to the second version, there is no later bein hashmashas. It's all included in one. Okay. Tana Rabbanan. Okay. In case you're confused, this is a new piece. You want to define bein hashmashas?
Why don't they define that first?
Oh. Okay. So for that, there are several gemaras that discuss bein hashmashas. And yeah, in Shabbos and in the Psachim, those are the big sugis of bein hashmashas.
You have to pick one.
No, there's different opinion. You see, halacha doesn't work like
Where
that.
they drink during Benishma. Forgot about the song.
There are things that have a halachic status that's all gray that we don't know because there's different opinions about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to be strict in all areas. That's why Shabbos starts at a certain time, but it ends at a later time. Why? Because there's bein hashmashas in the middle that we have to be strict about at the beginning of Shabbos to start earlier, and we have to be strict about at the end of Shabbos to end it later. So these are the things that are doubts, and we resolve it by being strict. Follow? Right. Tana Rabbanan. Haraya Kesem. Now we're going back to the beginning of Masechtas Nidda. The woman sees a stain. Metama atzma b'kachim l'mafreya divri Rebbe. She's tamei, and any kachim that she's involved with is also tamei l'mafreya. The mafreya means until this is a bit of a stricter opinion than we used to think. We were discussing this before. We said 24 hours. Now we have a little bit of a stricter opinion going back to her last time this was laundered. Because she put on the clothing and right, you see the receipt.
Where do you see them in here? I mean, we were saying within the 24 hours.
I wouldn't have known that. From the Gemara, it's going to be clear, but Rashi helps us out. Rav Shimon ben Elazar Aimer Kachim Mitama. Shimon ben Elazar says Kachim, yes, but Atzma in a Mitama, but herself, she's not Tamei. Now, when we say herself, we're referring to her calculation. Because she has to count Nidda and Diva and all of these things. Because if she would see if she would see blood, we said she's tamei miyesleis. That's whenever she saw it, she was a seeing of blood. Now it's just a stain. So if she sees blood, it's only 24 hours. A stain should not be more strict than actually seeing. And now you're going back further to the time of laundering, which is more time. The Gemara says, but 1 second, what are you gaining over here? You're saying that she herself isn't tamei, but kachim is tamei. You're picking and choosing over here, and you're giving a logic for it, and you're excluding the things that you're not explaining your whole opinion. Because regarding kachim, you take it back to the amount of a stain, which is laundry, and when it comes to herself, it's only 24 hours. Elatana hachi.
When it's laundry one.
When it's a stain, you take it back till the last on the cloth. She didn't feel it coming out. It goes back to the last time it was laundered.
That it was clean.
That it was clean, which could be much more than 24 hours.
Are we having machlokes with these days? One says laundered and one says 24 hours.
That's what's coming out over here. That's what's coming out regarding herself. Regarding kachim, they're agreeing that it's laundered. So the Gemara now says, Elatani hachi, Reb Shimon ben Elazar me'af kachim eina metama. It's much more than that, no.
I'm confused. Explain this here.
Yeah, let me just finish this line. We don't have her stains any more strict than her actual seeing, which is only 24 hours. Okay, yeah.
She did her laundry on Sunday.
Yeah.
And today is Wednesday.
Right.
We're worried that maybe,
It came on Sunday.
but she didn't wear it.
No,
on Sunday,
No, it means
Tuesday.
when she wore it. After the last time she laundered it, she wore it. So it goes all the way back till then.
Wait a minute, if she laundered it, you wouldn't see a stain on it.
No. She
That's why
laundered it on
that's
Sunday.
why you don't take
On
it back
Monday.
to prior to the laundry.
Went back on Monday.
Oh, you assume it was.
It came right after. You assume it came right after the laundry.
After.
She laundered on Sunday. We assume it was clean. Monday she put the clothes on. Wednesday she sees a stain.
So we assume that
Assume it's not
Monday.
happened on Monday.
Right.
Okay, fine. Take that here for Ooh, you're messing with the coin. Well, why?
Someone did a parody on that song about doing the daf. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Explain that. These are major videos.
Okay.
Why?
I have to find that.
Hey, what's the differentiation? Last time we had this argument, it was now we assume 24 hours ago.
Right.
So why are we assuming now went back 3 days?
So because over here, why is it stricter by a kesem?
Yeah, and that's the same thing. What do you think? It was a kesem and a badika. It's the same thing at the end of the day. One was found on a pair of clothing, and one was
I
found on a
guess
badika.
it won't. We don't assume that the blood is hanging out inside of her for more than 24 hours. No, she's tummy already when the blood exits the uterus.
Okay.
So she does an examination, and there's blood there, but it's possible that the blood was there already a few hours before. We say 24 hours. But a stain, if she could be, it was even more than that. Could be it was there. She didn't check the clothing, and she didn't do the laundry.
Once again, last week we had this question, right? A woman identifies that she's bleeding. So do we assume it happened now, or do we assume it happened the last week, right?
Right.
So what did she identify she's bleeding? What had she identified? She saw a thing.
No. That was talking about she was badka. Those cases, the beginning of the perek there was a bedika that was done. The bedika at the beginning of the Masechta, right? That was clear, no? There was a bedika that was done. And what we're claiming is that if she would have done the bedika 23 hours ago, she would have found it as well. That's what we're claiming. Okay. It was an interesting case, which actually has some relevance to halacha. This case, however, the Daf Yomi is not a halacha shir, but so if someone sees a stain and then afterwards she sees blood, so taila kisma beriyasa, we say that the blood is associated with the stain, or the opposite. The stain is associated with the blood, but we're saying that it doesn't go back because look, she's bleeding now. It must be that this is the beginning of the bleeding, and it's starting from right now, instead of going back, because now we see that she's got her period. So beriyasa, tela kisma beriyasa, me'es le'es divrei Rebbe. Now here the term me'es le'es means forward. Forward. If within 24 hours she has the onset of her period, so we say that the stain that she saw within these 24 hours doesn't go backwards, rather it goes it doesn't go forwards either. It goes from the time of the stain, but we say it's all the beginning of that period. It's all one thing, and you don't have to be metamar back. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Reb Shimon ben Elazar says it's only the day. It's not 24 hours. That means it goes till the end of the day. That you can assume this. Otherwise, if she would see the following night, then the stain that she saw today actually takes her back to the time of laundry, or takes her back to when she wore the clothing. So you can't associate it forward with the period that came. Amar Rebbe. Rebbe says Nirin Dvarav Midvarai. So we have an argument here between Rebbe and Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Rebbe has a larger time when you can associate a stain with the period, and Reb Shimon ben Elazar has a shorter time. Rebbe says that he seems more correct. Shehu mesakna v'ani ma'absa. Why? Because she's fixing the woman, and I'm making it harder on her. I'm making it worse. And when it comes to a stain, you want to be more lenient because a stain is only a derabanan. Why is a stain derabanan? Because Nidda has to do with hargasha. She has to feel the blood. If she doesn't feel the blood, so yes, she could be tummy, but that's only a rabbinic tumah. She doesn't feel the blood coming out. So a stain is only a derabanan. We'll see in the next paragraph about that. Now, the Gemara asks right away, Rebbe is accepting Reb Shimon ben Elazar. That means he's saying that she has a shorter time to associate the stain. It says, Mesakna, Ivsi Ma'avisla. What does it mean that that Reb Shimon ben Elazar is fixing her by giving her a shorter amount of time? He's making it worse. Because we're trying to get less tumah here, not more tumah. And if you have more leeway, 24 hours, for the stain to be attributed to a period, then that's better for her. If you cut it down to till nightfall, then if she gets her period after nightfall, then the stain is matam el mafreya. You have less time, not more. You have less. It's messing up the woman more. Amar Ravina Epoch. Ravina says, okay, switch it around. That really, Rebbe says, my words are more acceptable than his words. That's Ravina's pshat. Rav Nachman says, Leilam Leitepach, don't turn it around. Rebbe was accepting Reb Shimon ben Elazar, and his explanation is like this: Shumasakin el chesel li deziva, v'ani ma'avas el chesel deziva. It's an interesting point. An interesting point. What's happening here is that if after 7 days she sees blood, so will we say after 7 days of the stain, after 7 days from the stain, she sees blood. So according to Rebbe, that let's set up the case that she has a stain. 24 hours later, after nightfall, 24 hours later, 23 and a half hours later, she gets her period. Rebbe holds that stain was the beginning of her period, and the nidda starts from the stain. 7 days later, from the stain, say the stain was on Sunday, the period came on Monday. Rebbe attributes the stain to the period. So that means that 7 days later on Shabbos, it's over. And then on Sunday, that's already the beginning of Ziva. Now, according to Rebbe, the Ziva is starting on Sunday. According to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Ziva is starting on Monday. Why? Because Reb Shimon ben Elazar doesn't attribute the stain to the period. So he starts the period on Monday, So it's only going to end on the following Sunday. Zivas is going to be one. So Rebbe saying he's being more lenient because Zivas has much more strict halachas, and I'm keeping her away from Ziva. I'm bringing more Ziva because I'm starting it earlier. The Zivas could actually come now, and okay, that's the. Reb Zera Mirabasi. Reb Zera asked from Rabasi. Ksamim tzrichem hefsek tara elai.
The translation, Ma'avis?
Ma'avis means to like corrupt, to make it worse. That's what it means. What do they say?
Here it says lenient in that. That's not the translation of Ma'avis.
Masakin is fix, and Ma'avis is to ruin.
To ruin it.
To ruin. To ruin. So which means to be stricter on her, to give her a complication. Reb Zera asks Rabasi a question. Rabbi Asi is already in Eretz Yisrael, or also would be Rabasi. And my Gemara says it's Reish with a dash, which is Rabbi Asi. And Reb Zera is here, and Rabasi is there's a student of the Yeshua. So Ksamim tzrichem hefsek tara ilai. Do Ksamim require a hefsek tara? In other words, before the mikveh, you have to remember that we do a hefsek tara to start 7 clean days. That's not what we're talking about here. In those days, they kept it differently. They had Nidda and then they had Ziva, 2 different things. They could tell the difference between the blood based on the calendar. But at the end of 7 days after a kesem, she goes to the mikveh. But she only had a stain. She never saw blood. So does she need to do a hefsek tara then at the end of the 7 days as well, before she goes to the mikveh? Ishtik. He's quiet, and he doesn't respond. A while later, he sees that he's sitting and he's saying, Divrei Rebbe. That Rebbe holds that you have 24 hours to attribute the kesem to the period. And Reish Lakish says, but that's only if an examination was done. Now, this machlekes Rashi and Taisus how to learn this Gemara. The way Rashi is learning it is like this: that if she does a hefsek tara, according to her own calculation, that the period started from the stain, then we'll attribute the whole nidus to her calculation, to her hefsek tara that she's doing, and that means that will start from the stain. Rabbi Yochanan says it doesn't matter her what she thinks her calculation should be and when she does her hefsek tara. Amalei. So Reb Zera says mechlal the ksam tzrichem hefsek tara. That means that ksam do need a hefsek tara, a stain. Amalein, he says yes. But I asked you. He says many times I asked you. You never told me. Dilma agav shitvach asilach. Maybe through your learning it came back to you. Amalein agav shitvach asilach. It came back to me. I was learning and the halacha came back to me. I lost the halacha. Let's learn to the bottom. Let's see how far we can get. Okay, we have 7 days of Ziva, of Nidda, and 11 days of Ziva. Is that clear? Or should I clarify that? A woman sees blood, 7 days she's tummy Nidda. Doesn't matter if she sees for 7 days or she sees for 1 day. After those 7 days, then she has 11 days that she's potentially a Zava. How would she become a Zava? If she sees for 3 days straight, she becomes a Zava during those 11 days. 3 days during the first 7 days is regularly she's tummy anyway, whether she sees, she doesn't see. If she saw blood on the first of those 7, she's tummy for 7 days. Oh, I skipped this other kind of. There is another type of, during those 11 days, she could be a Zavaktana for 1 day or 2 days. But to be a Zavakadela, that would take 3 days during those 11 days of seeing consecutive. At the last day of the 11th day, she sees Yud Aleph Bein HaShmashos. So, it's Bein HaShmashos. Don't ask me which Bein HaShmashos. Did she see on the 11th day? Or did she see, is it the beginning of Nidda and now she's waiting for 7 days? If she saw on the 11th day, then that's old Ziva blood. And it depends. If she saw 2 days before that, she would be a Zava Gdoila. But if not, then it would just be a Zava Ktana, just 1 day. Or maybe she's in Nidda and she has to wait 7 days. So Tchilas Nidda, Seif Nidda, Tchilas Ziva, Seif Ziva. It's a complication over here. Ignore the fact that it says Tchilas Seif Nidda here. The Gemara is going to explain it because it's not a Seif Nidda. Okay, Yoim Arbaim Lazachav Yom Shmeina Lenakeva Ben Ashmashas, you have the same problem. Because she's tahar for 40 days, or she's tahar for 80 days, 66 or 33 days, and she sees Ben Ashmashas, we don't know what it is. Lakulam Harei Lutayas, all of these are mistakes. That, in other words, they have complications with their calculations. Amr Rabbi Shua says, Ad Shatim Mesaktim Es Hashaitis, until you start, and in other words, instead of fixing the fools, let's fix the ones that are intelligent. The Gemara is going to explain. Doesn't mean shaitis, mama. Tchilas nida safe nida, tchilas nida safe ziva. What are you saying? Tchilas nida safe nida. The Gemara asks right away. With that language of the Mishnah, that it's a question if it's the beginning of nida, the end of nida. That's not true. It's a question if it's the beginning of nida or end of ziva. That's the question. Rav Chisda hachi kamar. Rav Chisda says this is what it's saying. If it's the 11th day, then you have a doubt if it's the beginning of Nidda or the end of the Ziva. And the same applies on the 7th day, Ben Hashmashas. So if Nidda Tchila Ziva, could be it's still the end of Nidda, could be it's the beginning of the Ziva. Okay, the next Gemara is interesting Gemara, and we have to leave that for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you do this, is it a new one each day, or is it always
I
the
don't know,
same?
you got yours?
It's supposed to be the same Zoom match.
We try to like.
So,
Bye, thank you.